Welcome to Fulgur channel, where we bring you the latest and most critical updates from around the world. In today's video, we're delving deep into a high-stakes encounter in the South China Sea, where the U.S. and Philippine Navy engaged a China Coast Guard ship in a dramatic showdown. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more gripping content. In the heart of the South China Sea, a gripping showdown unfolds. The U.S. and Philippine Navy have just confronted a China Coast Guard ship in the midst of disputed waters. The South China Sea, it's a region where China claims sovereignty over almost the entire sea, challenging the maritime claims of neighboring countries. In this tense encounter, the U.S. and Philippine Navy vessels found themselves face to face with a China Coast Guard ship. Tensions ran high as they attempted to assert their presence in disputed waters. Naval maneuvers, radio exchanges, and strategic positioning brought the situation to a tipping point. The international community closely watches these events. The United States, a key ally of the Philippines, voiced its support for the Philippines' sovereignty, leading to an even more precarious situation. China's actions are seen by many as an assertive move in an already complex geopolitical landscape. China's Coast Guard took measures to drive away a Philippine Navy gunboat on Tuesday after it intruded into waters around the Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea, according to an official statement. The Coast Guard said it took necessary measures, such as forcing the gunboat out and controlling its route after repeated dissuasion and warnings from the Chinese side were ignored. China claims it has indisputable sovereignty over the shoal, which it calls Huanjian Island, and the adjacent waters. Last month, the Philippine Coast Guard said it had cut a 300-meter (980 feet) floating barrier installed by China that blocked access to the hotly disputed area, which Beijing has controlled for over a decade. A senior Filipino diplomat known for his past expletive-laced tirade against China joined a Coast Guard trip to the disputed South China Sea last week and saw Beijing ships block and nearly collide with Philippine vessels, including one he was on. Teodoro Locsin Jr. was on one of two Philippine Coast Guard vessels that escorted two Philippine boats to deliver food and other supplies to a Filipino Marine territorial outpost in the Second Thomas Shoal on October 4, the Department of Foreign Affairs said in a statement on Tuesday. It was not immediately clear why the public disclosure of his participation in the trip was delayed. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. appointed Locsin, 74, as a special envoy to China in August, in addition to his role as the Philippine ambassador to the United Kingdom based in London. As special envoy, he is expected to be up to date on the matters that he will discuss with China, and there is no better way to understand the West Philippine Sea issue than to see, for himself, what is happening in our own waters, Department of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Teresita Daza said, using the Philippine name for the South China Sea waters nearer the country's western coast. We are confident that this first-hand information will allow him to effectively convey our concerns to China, Daza said. As the Philippine Foreign Secretary under Marcos' predecessor, Rodrigo Duterte, Locsin often lashed out with blunt language on social media at China's increasingly aggressive actions in the disputed waters. When a swarm of Chinese boats converged in a Philippines-claimed reef in 2021, the then Foreign Secretary demanded in a tweet that the Chinese get out, using an expletive-laced critique. Locsin has not issued a statement since he witnessed firsthand 8 hours of hostilities on Wednesday at the Second Thomas Shoal, a rich fishing area off the northwestern Philippines. The shoal has been occupied by a small Philippine military contingent, but surrounded by China Coast Guard and militia vessels in a decades-long territorial standoff, and has been the scene of recent face-offs between China and the Philippines. We urge the Philippines to immediately stop its infringement, Coast Guard spokesman Gan Yu said, saying the action was also a serious violation of international law. The occurrence comes a day after China warned the Philippines against further provocations at an atoll in the South China Sea, saying such acts had violated Chinese territorial sovereignty, contravened international law, and disrupted regional peace and stability. Ties between the Philippines and China have deteriorated of late, in large part due to overtures from its president to deepen defense ties with Washington, including offering expanded access to its troops, ostensibly for training and humanitarian purposes. We condemn the behavior of the Chinese Coast Guard vessel. They have been violating international law, particularly the collision regulations, Terriella said at a news briefing Friday. It's the closest dangerous maneuver by any Chinese Coast Guard ship against a Philippine patrol ship, he said. The incident was witnessed by several journalists, including from the Associated Press, who were invited by the Philippine Coast Guard to join the trip as part of a strategy aimed at exposing aggressive Chinese actions in the South China Sea. A major clash in the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest trade routes, could potentially involve the United States, which has vowed to defend the Philippines, its treaty ally, if Filipino forces, ships or aircraft come under armed attack. China claims virtually the entire waterway on historical ground, but this was invalidated by a 2016 arbitration tribunal ruling. China refused to participate in the arbitration sought by the Philippines, rejected the ruling as a sham, and continues to defy it. Aside from China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan have been involved for decades in the territorial disputes, a long-feared flashpoint in Asia. 2 supply boats manned by Navy personnel and escorted by 2 larger Philippine Coast Guard vessels breached a Chinese Coast Guard blockade and succeeded in delivering food, water, and other supplies to Filipino Marines and Navy personnel stationed on a long-marooned but still actively commissioned Navy ship, the BRP Sierra Madre, at the shallows of the shore. Chinese Coast Guard and militia ships, however, blocked and surrounded the 2 Philippine Coast Guard escort vessels, including the BRP Cabra, which carried Locsin, from approaching the Second Thomas Shoal. A Chinese Coast Guard ship came within a meter, 3 feet, of colliding with the other Philippine Coast Guard vessel, the BRP Sindangan, whose crew members averted a collision by abruptly reversing the engine's thrust and then turning it off, according to Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson Commodore J. Terriella. The standoff raises significant questions about the future of the South China Sea. Will diplomatic channels prevail, or will this lead to further escalation? The implications of this confrontation are far-reaching, affecting not only the nations involved, but also the stability of the region. As the tension continues to brew in the South China Sea, we'll keep you updated with the latest developments. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay informed about this critical international issue. Thank you for joining us on Fulgur channel.